Hello and welcome to Tales of City, the podcast where we take the time to listen to some of the stories from the lives and experiences of the people who make City University the place that it is. And to begin this series, we celebrate the connection between the MA Podcasting course and that of MA Creative Writing, all here in City's School of Communication and Creativity. And here's a conversation we had recently with Aderonke Adeola. She tells us all about her work and how, through her stories, she's really getting to grips with some of the difficult issues that matter to her most. Issues that are very much at the heart of Nigerian society and culture. So have a listen. I hope you enjoy. Really glad to be joined today by Aderonke Adeola, who's from the MA Creative Writing course, and she has been a huge part of our course, haven't you, Aderonke? Thank you so much. You've been auditing right from the beginning, from last term. So, hello, and good to see you as always. And maybe you can tell us a bit about why you wanted to join us in MA Podcasting and what you've found from it so far.
Well, thank you for having me. I think that there's so many different ways to tell a story. You know, you could write a song, not very good at that. You could write a song or through a film, and I really love writing. And, you know, sort of in between walks and taking breaks, I kind of got into podcasting during the pandemic. I'd say maybe a little bit earlier than that. And obviously we had all this time on our hands during the pandemic. So I listened to a lot of podcasts, specifically narrative podcasts. And I was so excited when City announced that they were doing an MA in podcasting. And, you know, the wonderful thing about City is that you can take modules, you know, you have your core degree, whether you're an undergrad or a master's student, but you can, you know, take modules and other things that you're interested in. So I have a friend, actually, she's doing creative writing, and she's done modules in history and psychology, and she's auditing a lot. So I decided to audit. You know, I emailed Sandy War, one of the heads of the departments, and she was like, sure, join us. I think I was a week or two late because we always resume a week or two after the journalism and podcasting students. But, you know, I've learned so much, and it's reinforced a lot of what I've learned in literature and just the shape of narratives and the shape of stories. There's a lot of commonality, because obviously, you know, before podcasting, before film, was writing, was literature. So in many ways I've learned new things, but in other ways it sent me back to what I study. So that's quite endearing. So it's been amazing. You know, the students, the first cohort, the first MA podcasting cohort have been really friendly. You know, whenever I'm sort of struggling with something technical, you know, someone will always explain it to me, because obviously I'm not doing all the modules you guys are doing. Have to write a 60,000 word manuscript, so I don't quite have the time.
Oh, I was going to say that I think it's been a really mutually beneficial thing, because obviously when someone comes to audit a class, they can just sit there very quietly at the back, and that's fine if people don't want to necessarily be a part of it. But I think that it's been wonderful the way that we've benefited from you being there and from your insights, from your background and your knowledge of the storytelling process, which of course, as you've pointed out, is very much a part of the podcast medium. We are all in the storytelling business in some form or other, and I think that that's been really, really important, the way that you've been a part of it. And so it's been. I think we're all very grateful for you being here. And we're also really grateful today because you're going to read an excerpt from... Now, tell us a little bit. You can set the story up. You're going to read, and then we're going to have a little discussion about it. So thank you for that. Thank you for agreeing to do that.
I suspect the microphone might pick up my beating heart.
The excellent technology that we have, the equipment will even pick up the heart. Yeah.
So this is it's a short story about the end of a marriage, and I'm really obsessed with families and family dynamics. I'm obsessed with writing about families, and as a Nigerian, family is such a important unit. In Nigeria, like, one of our worst curses is saying that you weren't raised properly, your parents didn't raise you well. That's such a insulting thing to say. And for better or worse, families are sort of the primary way we sort of experience life. I think the poet Rupi Kaur said, "My family is my first heartbreak." So yeah, I'm sort of obsessed with not unconventional families, but I don't want to say toxic families either, but maybe dealing with trauma within, intergenerational trauma within families, and the good sort of overcoming it and succumbing to it. So it's not all doom and gloom. What I'm about to read is sort of like a woman who's sort of thinking of her youth and how all she wanted was to be a wife, and that reality isn't quite what she imagined it to be. And I think we can all relate to that, not necessarily in marriage, but maybe a job or a situation we find ourselves, or a career goal, just it not necessarily panning out. So it's quite a short piece. So yeah, it's set in Lagos, Nigeria, which is where I'm from. Here goes, quiet beating heart. It's always a bit nerve-wracking reading your own work, but let's go. A woman sat in her bedroom in Lagos, thinking of the girl she used to be. As a child, she dreamt of getting married in an ornate white dress and a handmade lace veil. She dreamt of her future husband, a man she'll love, in many ways a man she already loved, though she hadn't met him. She wanted to live in a big house with 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. The woman reflected on the foolish girl she used to be and how her dreams came true. She met Kunle, the most dashing man. He swept her off her feet. Their families planned the biggest wedding that caused traffic all across Lagos. Kunle let her design the house of her dreams. She selected every single detail of the house, the color scheme, the wood fittings, and the tiles. Every piece of furniture was handmade by local artisans and craftsmen. Their house had high ceilings with wooden beams. It was a proud house that stood tall with an outdoor garden to match, where their children would be able to run free and host the fanciest dinner parties. The heartbeat of the house was always going to be the kitchen, a place of joy, where she'd share home-cooked meals with the people she loved the most. Her dream kitchen had large windows and a central hob. The marble floor amplified the warmth and light that shone through the windows. Her mother loved cooking and passed her culinary prowess to her, and she in turn planned to pass it on to her children. The young girl she used to be prayed for this life, this kitchen, this house, and God granted her prayers. Unfortunately, the woman she became grew to resent all of it. The marriage, the house, the tiles, and the wall paint. 10 years had passed since she married and moved into her matrimonial home. She stood in her beautiful kitchen, committing an act she never thought she was capable of doing. In her well-lit kitchen, she stood over a helpless maid, raining punches over her. Left hand, then right hand, then left again. "Madame, please stop," cried Savren the cook, looking aghast. The maid lay on the floor, curled like a ball, with one hand covering her face and the other covering her midsection. "Mommy, no," a beautiful little boy said, standing next to Savren. She stopped hitting Vero for what could have been a minute and looked up at the little boy. She searched his face, looking for a part of herself, but could not find it. All she saw was his father and something else. Then she continued hitting her maid.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I had the advantage of, Tim here, you haven't heard that before. I had the advantage of reading it yesterday. So I read it a couple of times. But I remember when I first read it, because of course it's a huge shift in what you're expecting, a real twist.
It's quite moving. It was very moving. All the details at the beginning get you invested, and then for the twist at the end, it was excellent writing.
Oh, thank you.
Beautifully done. And I think that the motif that struck me, particularly hearing it for the third time, was just that, and I think it's also because what you said about the family being the first heartbreak, and that linking with the kitchen being the heartbeat of the house, and how it would then be the scene of a heartbreaking moment. And the sense of the pain that emanates from that. There's layers of pain. There's the pain, obviously, of the main character. But then there's the pain of the person being hit. There's the pain of the child seeing their mother doing something like that. And it just shows how interlinked. I mean, families are a messy business. And of course, it's no accident that's where great dramas and great pieces of writing have always centered theatre, drama, whatever, around the family. And we see that beautifully captured here. I think you said that you wrote that quite a while ago, did you?
Yeah, I wrote that in 2022, actually. And one thing I didn't mention is I also wanted to discuss class. So 21st century Lagos is a lot like 19th century London, so the Victorian class sort of structure where there's sort of the aristocracy, and then they've got the working class who are like the maids and the drivers and the butlers. And Lagos is still very much like that. Most sort of middle class families have, cooks, cleaners, drivers, nannies. So I also wanted to explore the dynamics of class and how often people take out their frustrations on the people that work for them, and they can't defend themselves because they need the money. You can't, if you worked at Starbucks and your boss hit you, I mean, apart from reporting them to the police, you can find a job elsewhere. But in Lagos, it's so difficult. You have to sort of take it to make it through. So I also wanted to explore the intersection of sort of class and families as well.
How much, obviously there's awareness because everybody there is aware of what's happening, but this story, of course, really speaks to the injustice of that. I mean, how much do you feel that's being heard in Nigeria at the moment? Or is there still an acceptance, this is the way it is, and so on?
Unfortunately, this is just the way things are. I think if you're a working class Nigerian, the prayer is to have fair bosses. But there's no safeguarding if you're of that class, and that's just very much the reality, unfortunately. And it's interesting. It's a little bit, what's the name of that really popular series?
I was thinking of Downton Abbey.
Yes, literally, Downton Abbey, how the domestic staff are part of the family. I mean, of course, they have their own families and their own burdens, but they see all and know all. And I really wanted to just explore that in that story. And back to your previous comment about the layers of pain, like, even though she's the one hurting someone else, only a hurt person would do that. She didn't, when she was dreaming of her home and the kitchen and the garden, and she didn't, this is not the person she wanted to become. Of course, she's got very poor coping mechanisms, not to let her off the hook, obviously this fictional character, but it's, I think everyone, especially at the end of that, is in pain. The cook is like, please stop, madam. And the kid's like, Mom, don't do this. And obviously the person being beaten up, she's in pain. And the woman's in pain as well. She can't control herself. So it's also interesting how we all share pain.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of writing something like that? What kind of headspace are you getting into to go on that writing expedition? And how long does that take? Is that something you're busting out over one session, or is that taking weeks to do?
Tim, I wish. In one of our modules, I found out Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, what's the Curious Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that author wrote it in 6 weeks. Like, whatever he was on, I need to find out. But no, I need to rewrite quite a lot. So I'm the kind of person that I can write a first draft really quickly. I can write a first draft in probably as quick as, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But before I can share it, it takes a lot of rewriting. So yeah, I had the premise of the story and I was able to write it very quickly. But, you're working on the grammar and the descriptions and the setting and the voice and the dialogue and the tone. It's still a work in progress, actually. So it takes time. It takes time, yeah.
How did it feel reading it out? Because presumably, was that the first time you'd read it out?
Yes, so it's interesting. In the creative writing course, do I want to say bi-monthly opportunities to read your work? I've never done it. So it's just, I think there's that insecurity that is my work good enough? Because the authors that inspire me, I mean, they're, the Chimamandas and the Michael Cunninghams that wrote The Hours. the writers that I love, they're really good. So there's just this fear that my work isn't good enough ultimately. I mean, I've even, done I have a little podcast portfolio that I'm building, and I'm so scared to share it. Like, is it good enough? So there's a lot of fear in reading out my own work. And I know the only way to do it is to practice it more. But I don't know about that.
What kind of headspace do you have to get into to write something that heavy? Because that's not a light subject at all.
Good question. I think sometimes listening to sad music helps to really bring out the emotion. And what sort of headspace? I really need to focus, turn off my phone. And I know it's almost self-explanatory, but I really need to sort of almost get into the zone, sort of like how athletes, just before they're about to, whatever, the Olympics or whatnot, just really try and situate myself in the lead character's feelings. And even though this is a fictional piece, she's very real to me. She's not just this one-dimensional woman that just goes around like hurting people. So I almost have to pretend that she's real and that in a way I am her, because it's written from her perspective. Yeah.
And in light of the sensitive issues, and you spoke about how that in Nigeria it's basically that's the way it is, but obviously the medium that tackles these issues will always be art and culture, and this is where these subjects are often tackled full on. Is there much, what is happening within, say, in literature at the moment? Is there much discourse concerning these issues, do you feel?
Yes and no. I think that a lot has changed. There are a lot of writers talking about, LGBTQ, which did not exist 10 years ago, which is great. But in terms of talking about class sufficiently, I think maybe, there's some great authors that I don't think that's necessarily. I think to write about Nigeria authentically and not engage in the class dynamics is to write about somewhere else. It's not authentic. So there are many amazing Nigerian, African, Ghanaian writers that are dealing with this. But in terms of it sort of making the change that needs to happen, especially in a post-pandemic global economic crisis that we're experiencing all over the world, I'm not sure if it will have any impact. But do I, read stories that address these things? Yes, I do.
This is a great reminder that this is where people like yourself can come in, because you are a writer, and this is perhaps one avenue that you can explore. And then, which leads to the question, what you're hoping to be doing, where you hope to take your art and writing. What are your thoughts? I know it's early days yet, but what do you think about the future?
Well, I'm really happy that I did this podcasting module for sure. I certainly want to be a published author. That would be the dream. It's so hard, so competitive, AI, blah, 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 but I still have hope. AI is here, but it hasn't taken over completely yet. And I would love to produce and write some audio fiction. I would absolutely, I'd love to, and I've sort of started brainstorming ideas to explore that space. I think it would take slightly longer to be a published author. Have to finish my manuscript and rewrite it. And one of my favorite books, Homegoing by Ya Gayasi, who's a Ghanaian American author. It took her 6 years to write her book. Hopefully it doesn't take me as long, but who knows? It's going to take slightly longer because the first manuscript is sort of an intergenerational story and families dealing with a Nigerian family based in Lagos and then London, and so it's quite an expansive story. But I hope that while I'm working on that, I could, maybe work on some audio fiction somewhere, somehow. So yeah, that's the dream.
And it's a great reminder of why we've enjoyed having you in the class. And as I say, you've contributed a lot to it. And And it's a great reminder that the podcast medium is all about storytelling. And I think a day doesn't go by without us all worrying about AI in some form or other. But I think the important thing, there's always going to be a need for storytelling and stories that matter, stories that speak to the issues in society. And I think you've really reminded us of that today. And hopefully anyone listening, if they're looking for a wonderful voice, you've got a great voice and a great storyteller.
Thank you.
And I think that we need to hear more, and we look forward to hearing more. So thank you. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you, yes.
And thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.
Hope you enjoyed that. And if so, then as always, be sure to subscribe and follow all the Word on the Square content wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening today. Until next time, I'm Charlie Brown. This was Tales of City.